Well, I mean, like I said, music industry isn't being run by musicians, so it's being run by accountants and lawyers. So
Beyonce have ruled the music world like royalty for years, but that shiny crown might be cracking. And everyone long ago calling out the glittering music empire.
I think once I saved on my face, I pretty much knew the outcome. I mean, you have to understand that that word on one's face pretty much changes that.
He called record contracts day slavery, and even wrote the word slave on his own face to show how deep he ran. While he stood again, he watched the Carters climb higher and higher in that same industry's corrupt core. Now, JayZ's real name has popped in those documents, and people can't stop talking. Prince's powerful machine protecting certain stars. It's all starting to sound way too real. Cat Will saw the same as Prince did. He just did. He used to watch from the parking lot while the so-called industry elite led up to those secret Hollywood Hills parties, and came back down looking and changed forever. Something was going on behind those mansion gates, and Cat knew it. Now let's rewind to where it all began. Prince Rogers Nelson was only 18 when he signed his first deal with Warner Brothers back in 1977.
Well, it's not your game. You didn't make the rules, so everything comes hard. As long as you're signed to a contract, you share of the winnings. A select few of us will do well, the majority will not.
From Minneapolis, had been crafting music. He reached the keys, take on the world. People gave him something unheard of at the time. Full creative control over 3 albums, publishing rights. That was power few artists are touched, especially a newcomer. When his first album dropped in April 1978, it was all Prince. He wrote it, arranged it, and played every one of the 27 instruments on it. 27. The record way more than his, but Prince didn't care one bit. He wasn't chasing a check. He was building a legacy that would be his, no matter what. By 1984, it exploded across the world. #1 album, #1 movie, #1 artist. Prince was unstoppable, and Warner Brothers saw nothing but flashing in their eyes. They locked him into a massive 6-album deal, reportedly worth $100 million, the biggest solo artist contract ever at the time. But as Prince would soon find out, that kind of money always comes with strings attached. The press release made headlines around the globe. The just win of his deep inside that mountain of paperwork was a catch so slick, so buried, didn't realize the trap until it was way too late. That extended secretly handed over the ownership of all his music to brothers. Every song he'd ever written, every word he'd ever made, and every note he'd create for the next 6 albums. Everything he poured his soul into now, to the not him. When Prince finally saw the truth, it hit hard. He had traded his legacy for an advance wrapped in chains. In 1993, he tried to pick his masters, but Warner Brothers shut him down cold. No, he asked to release music on his own terms because real creativity doesn't follow a... But again, no. He just wanted to own what he created with his own 2 hands, but the label refused to let go. To the fine print and ugly side of the more disgusted he became a partnership. His controlled dress business that looked fancy on art of everything they own. So Prince did the unthinkable. He went to war with tried to claim his life's work. He changed his name to a symbol that the media started calling, formerly known as Prince. He showed up in public with the word slave scrawled across in bold black marker, making sure the whole world saw exactly what was happening. For his music, he was fighting for his freedom. Prince showed up to the 95 Brit Awards with the slave blazing, and when he took the stage, his entire acceptance speech was just a few chilling words. In concert, perfectly free, on record, slave. That moment shocked everyone. He wore it proudly on too, standing firm and fearless while telling every interviewer the same thing, nothing more than modern-day slavery. He warned young artists straight up, don't sign, no matter how good that money looks. But the industry did that one bit, to paint him as unstable, said he'd lost it, still to be silenced. He kept speaking the truth louder and louder. For the next 2 years, he went into overdrive, dropping album not to change or top to break free from his deal with Warner Brothers. He wasn't focused on awards. He was on freedom and complained publicly, saying Prince was oversaturating the market and ruining his own sales, but he didn't care. By then, he had one mission: get out, get free, and own his art again. To Prince, freedom was worth more than any chart or royalty check could ever be. Prince never stopped preaching one powerful message: ownership is everything. He told anyone who that in the music business, if an artist doesn't own their masters, they don't truly own anything. The label can take your songs, throw them into commercials for products you'd never touch, or stick your music in movies that go against everything you believe in, and you can't say a word about it. They can even your entire to some investment firm for millions, while the artist who created it all gets nothing but silence. Prince wasn't to the system, exposed how the same corporations signing artists in the radio stations, owning distribution channels, controlling the magazines, and even running the award shows. It was one big machine to drain every drop of value from artists while giving them just enough to keep them quiet. By 1996, Prince finally broke free from Warner, but not without a fight. Every single album he bounced from label, this time on his terms. He demanded ownership, control, and creative freedom every step of the way. Prince even became one of the first artists to music to fans through the internet, way ahead of his time. And when streaming platforms like YouTube started rising, he shut them completely. He said they're just another trap, letting corporations cash his work without giving them their fair share. To make it clear, control your art or someone else will. When JayZ launched Tidal in 2015, surprised everyone by joining forces with him, because on the surface, it looked like the one streaming platform that actually cared about artists. JayZ pitched it as artist-owned and artist-friendly, a place where creators could finally get a fair shake and scraps from the giants like Spotify and Apple Music. On paper, it looked like a dream team, two legends fighting the same war for artist rights. But Prince had been in this game too long to be blinded by promises. He'd spent decades with corporations up as partners, and deep down, New Tidal was still a corporation, no matter who owned the shares or how good the marketing sounded. Then came the shock. He passed away in April 2016. Tidal fully takes shape. After his death, his estate turned around and sued the platform, claiming it was streaming songs it didn't even have rights to. And in 2017, JayZ did a track on his album that seemed to address the whole mess directly. The irony was so thick you could slice it. Two icons once aligned over freedom and ownership, now tangled in the same fight they'd been warning about all along. Prince spent his entire life shouting warnings about ownership, control, and the dark games played behind the music industry's closed doors. And then, just months after his death, his own catalog got in the exact kind of battle he tried to prevent. The timing couldn't have been more eerie. Fast forward to January 30th, 2026, the Department of the Bombshell releasing over 300,000 tied to Jeff Epstein. This massive info dump to the Epstein Files Transparency Act by President Trump just 30 days before had never seen anything like it. Deputy Attorney announced that even more documents were coming. The DOJ needed extra time to handle redactions before releasing the rest. The files were explosive. Photos, flight logs, grand jury testimony, internal FBI messages, and old tip line reports that had been locked away for years. At the internet, news outlets, online sleuths went to overdrive, digging through every single page, searching for familiar names and faces. Then the first bomb dropped. Photos surfaced showing Jeffrey Epstein with Michael Jackson that looked like a social event. The internet went wild, and people started asking just how deep these connections really went. What investigators covered next, shockwaves through the media. They found dinner photos of Megger sitting Bill Clinton, all smiles like was off. Then came even more unsettling images. In a pool, Lane Maxwell and another person whose face was by written marks. The files didn't stop there. Flight logs revealed repeated trips to Epstein's private island stretching across multiple years, names people never expected to see. Right among the thousands of two-page FBI report dated July 10th, 2019. It came through the National Operations Center hotline at exactly 8:20 a.m. Eastern Time. A woman called in, identifying herself as a victim of Jeffrey Epstein and others. That report changed everything, because right there on an official FBI tied to an Epstein's number sat JayZ's government. According to the woman's statement, she claimed that Weinstein was involved in sexual misconduct while JayZ was present in the room. She told investigators she had been drugged, leaving her memory foggy, but she still to identify specific people by name. She said it happened not once, but 7 different times over the years. Every time she woke up, she was in what she described as lavish indoor settings, the kind of luxury only money and power could buy. The woman didn't stop there. She also named Leon, the powerful of global management, and William Barr, who was actually serving as attorney at the time of her as being during some of the incidents. Within just hours of that FBI intake hitting the web, screenshots flooding every social media platform. The internet exploded. JayZ's name shot straight to the top of worldwide trending lists, and suddenly those old rumors that people brushed off didn't sound so far-fetched anymore. They looked like patterns, backed by official documents from the government itself. Then came out. Beyonce reportedly lost over 10 million Instagram followers in just a few days. The drop was so massive that entertainment news outlets started running stories about the sudden collapse in her numbers. Reports even claimed that big names like Rihanna, Katy Perry, and shockingly, Beyonce's own mother, had all unfollowed JayZ on Instagram. Some social media analysts tried to calm things down, saying follower counts always fluctuate, and reminding people that JayZ has a habit of clean. It didn't matter anymore. The internet had already opinion shots speak louder than explanations, and the damage to the Carter's image was already done. Then came Lizzo, with a defending JayZ, his name showing up in the Epstein files, to being on trial for stealing an apple at Walmart, and even asked, so what? Everyone in your phone is now an accomplice? She said people were falling for and the internet was twisting things out of control. But didn't take it lightly. Backlash hit hard. Within hours, Lizzo deposed after her comments, calling out how comparing a pet to something as serious as the Epstein case complete of why these files mattered. Not long after, both the Department of Justice and several major news outlets to set a crucial detail that got lost in the viral storm. JayZ's name wasn't pulled from Epstein's flight logs, calendar, or any verified investigator. It came from a tip line report, a call made by a member of like thousands of others. In short, it was a not confirmed proof. But by the time that truth came out, social media had already run wild with the story. If anyone was guilty, he'd been investigated. Just a report. And while JayZ's name did appear in that line entry, completely missing from Epstein's little black book, the one that had already been verified long before. But in those first wild days, it didn't matter. Optics did. The internet went into blown detective mode. Every old JayZ interview was dug up. Every lyric came through like a crime scene, connecting dots. Some real, some linking JayZ, Diddy, R. Kelly, with even a scandal attached to their name. Online, that was simple. Where there's this much smoke, there's got fire. And that's when Cat Williams' name started trending again. The same industry for years suddenly looked prophetic. In his viral Club Shay shoe from January 2024, didn't hold back. Talked about Crick being on Epstein's island about Hollywood, but terrible things supposedly happened behind closed doors. Back then, people called him bitter, said he was chasing, but now those clips were being reshared everywhere, framed as receipts. It looked like he'd been trying to tell the truth long before anyone was ready to hear it. In February 2026, Williams sat down for a deep, no-holds-barred interview, his upcoming Netflix special, The Last Report. And once again, he had the internet, but the comedian had already shaken the world 2 years earlier with that appearance, where he fearlessly dropped names and cut the entire industry, saying exactly what others were too scared to admit. Now, he was back. And this time, Big even did who really pulls the strings in Hollywood and the music industry. Williams spoke about how decades watching him from the sidelines, saying he was never part of the inner circle, never one of the chosen insiders who got those secret invitations. He painted a haunting picture, talking about how in Los Angeles, certain parking lots were laden with limos and SUVs waiting to take industry players up into the Hollywood Hills. Buses were in, and did those exclusive mansion parties that no outsider ever saw. Said he never stepped buses, not once. He wasn't invited. That's what saved him. He'd stay back, leaning on his car, smoking and watching, as those same people who went up shining kicked down hours later, drained and changed. According to Cat Williams, the men who had it on with confidence never came back the same. They looked different, their energy gone, their eyes, spirits crushed. They didn't just look tired, they looked broken. He described them as like they'd been swimming in something they shouldn't have. And strangely, they all seemed to be wearing Sean John clothing, with their shoelaces untied like some odd uniform. Cat said he could never explain it. It's funny, hunched over, moving slow, something hurt. Then they'd climb into their expensive cars and drive off. Some of them even through the sunroof, heads out in the wind, like they were desperate to breathe again. He said watching that cycle, in arrivals and the empty departures, was something he'd never forget. He called it one of the wildest things I ever saw in my Hollywood journey. And through it all, Williams made one thing very clear. He wasn't scared to speak. Not now, not ever. He said no record label could silence him, no movie studio could threaten him, and no executive could dangle a over his head. That owned everything, his voice. That freedom, he said, was the only reason he could finally tell the truth about what really goes on behind those Hollywood gates. Williams built his career completely into exactly why no one could silence him. No label could, no student blacklist, no network could. That freedom came with a heavy price, but it also gave something far more powerful, the ability to that most entertainers wouldn't dare whisper. Not during his 2026 interview, he talked about a fraternity comedian who didn't make the kind of baby oil culture that supposedly ran deep in Hollywood. His alleged habits weren't even subtle. Cat had been making those kind of comments for years, long before any indictments or court documents turned them into headlines. Now the internet was treating him a prophet, the man who saw it all coming while everyone else laughed him off. It wasn't just Diddy he talked about. It had been Oprah Winfrey, long before coverage pulled her name back into public discussion. He questioned her tight connections to the most powerful people in politics, never outright accusing her of anything, but always letting that implicate his everything he didn't. Now those old surfacing with people watching them and asking the same question. What did Williams really know? And how long had he been trying to warn us? And the truth is, Oprah's history with some troubling figures was all used her platform to promote of God, producing him on her show as a miraculous faith healer who could cure diseases through spiritual energy. Millions of viewers tuned in, inspired by her glowing words, and many even traveled all the way to just to see him, believing in the miracle she years later apart. John of convicted on counts of sexual abuse. Survivors came forward to horrific experiences, being held captive that were then sold. Those were disturbing of years, and yet, through all of it, publicly addressed her role in giving him that global spot. The spoke louder than any statement ever could. And now, people were demanding answers louder than before. Oprah's longtime Harvey Weinstein was well documented. Photos of them side by side. The events spent years. When the shocking allegations against Weinstein finally went in 2017 at the hashtag #MeToo movement, Oprah were outraged like everyone else. But critics weren't convinced. They pointed out that Hollywood had been whispering about Weinstein's behavior for decades. Someone as influential as Oprah couldn't have missed those rumors completely. Then there was the scandal that hit her Leadership Academy for Girls back in 2007. A dormitory matron was sexually abusing students, and the school faced them after parents revealed they were only allowed to see theirs once a month. It raised serious questions about oversight at a school found and promoted for young women. Critics began noticing a troubling pattern, not one of willful blindness, but built her around empowerment. Yet time, she seemed to people who were later as predators. When the truth came out, she would express shock, distance herself, and move on, without ever fully addressing the influence she had given them. Meanwhile, the loss of a prince still hit the industry. He passed away on April 21st, 2000, inside Paisley Park in Minnesota, 57 years old. His death of an era, beginning of even more questions about the forces that shaped and sometimes destroyed the biggest names and entertainment. The official report, it was an overdose. Counterfeit pills laced with deadly fentanyl. Emergency responders found Prince unresponsive in an elevator inside his Paisley Park estate. The investigation ruled out suicide and foul play. But even that conclusion stopped the questions. He died, Prince had fully won the war he'd been fighting for decades. Back in 2014, he signed a groundbreaking new deal with Warner Bros., the same label that once owned him, to reclaim full ownership of his masters. The company that had once held his art in chains now needed him more than he needed them. That meant everything to him, doing live shows, his main source of income. First time in his career, he could perform whatever songs he wanted because he finally owned them. He poured his energy into mentoring younger artists, schooling them outside of the business, explaining how records aren't free money. They're loans the labels before artists a dime. He warned them straight up, if you don't own your masters, you're just renting your sessions. The only way to build real generational wealth was to keep control of your art. Just tried to push him for always, he never called out people, but his the power structures he'd been building his entire life. He'd seen how certain artists rose effortlessly, while others with equal talent got. He'd seen which executives never consequences for what they did. And now, with the files blowing open old secrets, new scandals entertainment world almost every day, those words from Prince, his calm, cryptic warnings, suddenly hit harder than ever before. As the industry kept unraveling in early 2026, the lines between corruption and reality started to every week. A new name dropped, a new secret from the shadows. It wasn't just random connecting patterns, tracing money trails, and realizing how deep the machine really went. While headlines focused on files about missing assets, accounts, companies quietly linked to payment executives, a handful of artists began breaking their silence. They'd been warned for years not to ask questions, especially about who really funded the tours and the award shows. One former manager even claimed the real power players weren't film at all. They were investors and billionaires who used the culture as their camouflage. Meanwhile, fans started digging into old interviews, resurfacing cryptics from stars like Kanye West, Chappelle, and Lauryn Hill, who had all spoken about industry control long before social media made it mainstream. Suddenly, it didn't sound so crazy. They sounded like warnings we weren't ready to hear. And artists began organizing online, inspired by Prince's blueprint. Own your masters, own your own project, and keep your art out of corporate hands. A movement loud and unfiltered, demanding transparency from record labels and streaming platforms that had operated in the dark for too long. By February's end, rumors swirled that a sealed Central Epstein contains even bigger but had already been released. The department silent, but people online weren't waiting. They were already convinced the truth was far uglier and far higher up than anyone did. And through it all, one question echoes the internet. If Prince was right about what else had about that we don't know, every time Prince broke it down, every time he really worked, called the music business a form of modern-day slavery. And every time he dropped hints about what happened behind those closed doors, he was revealing something dark that most people couldn't even imagine. He saw through the glitter, through the fame, through the fake smiles, and into the heart of a machine that's been called it art. For 40 years, he tried to warn everyone. He told the truth on live TV, in interviews, on stage, and even in his music. Some people heard him. They learned themselves and walked their own paths. But most didn't listen. They thought he was exaggerating. Until now. Because now the documents are public. Are right there for everyone to see. What was once labeled as conspiracy, the courtrooms, news feeds, and official and suddenly, all those eerie messages Prince left behind don't sound like paranoia anymore. They sound like prophecy. The whispers, the warnings for ownership, it all meant something bigger. Prince wasn't just trying to save his own music, he was trying to open people to the truth behind the entire industry. So now, as those long-buried secrets coming to light, one thing's certain. His voice, his message, and his legacy are louder than ever before. History might have been life and death. Prince's warnings are finally being heard. If you made it this far, you know this story isn't about music. It's about power, control, and truth. So make sure to like, subscribe, share, and drop a comment below. Let's keep the conversation alive because the world deserves to know what Prince tried to tell us all along.